So I am excited to share with you some of the things that we've been doing behind the scenes. And when I say we, I mean the JEDI core group and many others who have been keeping a strategic eye on all things justice, equity, diversity, and inclusivity. And we created this session because many people in our community were either not aware of what's happening or had some concerns, some understandable concerns about some things that are happening in our community. So we wanted to create a space for us to share historically what Naropa has done in these areas, as well as what we're presently doing and what we plan to do in the future. So, and I want to just take a moment to introduce some of my team members here. So my name is Amanda Aguilera. I think I know all of you actually, or most of you. So, I am currently serving in the position of Senior Director of Mission, Culture, and Inclusive Community. And I have the privilege of working in this area specifically for the community, alongside my fearless leader, my boss, my colleague, Regina Smith. You want to say a word?
Word.
There's a word from Regina. Regina is also on the core group, the JEDI core group, which we'll review in just a moment. And Regina, if I miss anything, please feel free to jump in with details. Also, Sean Goodman, who's program manager for MCIC, is here, and he supports me in all things, keeps me in line, and helps to make a lot of these things happen. And then I see Susan Berggraf, who's also on the JEDI core team, is here. Michael Bauer is here, who's MCIC. Carla Mueller is here, who's also with CASE and MCIC. So wonderful to see you all. Sherry Elms, Ann Parker. So many of you are already involved in a lot of these initiatives, and I want to just share a few things via the PowerPoint, because there's just a lot of information that I'd like to share. It is an information session, so a PowerPoint seemed appropriate. But before we go into the more informative stuff, I'm actually going to share my screen again. I want to just, let's see, share this quote, which I already shared with the JEDI ambassadors. I'll go through this in a minute, but this is a quote from Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams. And it just kind of puts a frame on where we are. So I invite you to either read this to yourself, or I can read it aloud as well. We simply cannot engage with either the ills or promises of society if we continue to turn a blind eye to the egregious and willful ignorance that enables us to still not get it in so many ways. It is by no means our making, but given the culture we are emerging from and immersed in, we are responsible. White folks' particular reluctance to acknowledge impacts as a collective while continuing to benefit from the construct of the collective leaves a wound intact without a dressing. The air needed to breathe through forgiveness is smothered. Healing is suspended for all. Truth is necessary for reconciliation. Will we express the promise of and commitment to liberation for all beings, or will we instead continue a hyper-individualized salvation model the myth of meritocracy that is the foundation of this country's untruth. So this is a quote that I share with you to frame all it is that we're doing. We have a choice right now, and it feels particularly emphasized today as the inauguration day. We have a choice in which direction we're choosing to go, both individually and collectively. And choosing to move in the direction of liberation requires a lot from us individually and collectively. So I want to say that as a leader of this work and as someone who exists in a white body, that there's a lot that I will miss. There's a lot that my perspective will not encompass the experience of all. So I just want to say the presentation that I'm doing today is in the context of me being in a white body presenting this. So there will be things that I miss, and I just want to acknowledge that and to encourage you to speak up either by unmuting yourself or using the chat. And as always, you can get in touch with me if you have feedback for me. I always welcome that. So it's hard for me to track questions in the chat while I'm presenting, but hopefully someone can jump in and let me know if there are questions that I can address along the way. So as I was saying before, there's a core group of us that are really deriving JEDI initiatives. And this small core group, the four of us have been meeting for quite a while now to come up with the strategies and action plan that we currently have. And so the core group consists of Regina Smith, who you met, Dr. Carla Sherrill, who's core faculty in the somatic department, Betsy Blom, who is department chair of elementary education, and then myself. And then supporting newer members are Sean Goodman and Susan Burgraff. So I want to just briefly go over some of the history of diversity efforts at Naropa. And this by no means is comprehensive. It would take me 50 slides to cover everything that's ever been done at Naropa in terms of diversity. But this is kind of a general overview of the last 5 to 7 years. And I'll go into specifics on a few things just to give some context. One of the major developments of JEDI, of course, was Decolonized Commons, which happened in 2015, in April of 2015, as a result of a protest led by students who camped out on the green and had a list of demands, which I'll share with you in a moment. Some of you might have been there. I was not here at that time, so some of you might be able to speak to it better than I can. But as a result of the Decolonized Commons list of demands and the response from the institution, the Office for Inclusive Community was created with the leadership of Regina Smith. And Office for Inclusive Community existed and supported all of what then was DEI, but now JEDI efforts at Naropa. And that took the form of many different things. One of those things was a coalition for cultural transformation that was formed by folks across the university that started to look at more integral things at an institutional level, such as policy and curriculum benchmarks and hiring, things like that at a much more deeper level. So that started in 2016. That group no longer meets, but has been transformed, as has the Office for Inclusive Community, or the OIC. The OIC also formed what was then and is currently CRESS, so the Community Repair and Response Team, in an effort to expand the capacity for us to engage in the conversations necessary for bringing to light institutional and interpersonal inequity. And then finally, where we are currently is the transformation of the Office for Inclusive Community now into a division called Mission, Culture, and Inclusive Community. Oh, I forgot to update the description. We're not talking about Mars from MCIC. MCIC is a division actually that we have created and expanded, and as a result of some of the things that happened over the summer, including the murders of several more people of color, the Naropa University decided to really invest a lot more staff resources, financial resources, and just capacity directed specifically towards JEDI. So Mission, Culture, and Inclusive Community now includes, is basically subsumed Office for Inclusive Community, and includes JEDI initiatives. It includes Restorative Community, which is includes Community Repair and Support Team, or CREST. It includes the Joanna Macy Center. It includes the Center for the Advancement of Contemplative Education. And it includes the Sustainability Office. So all of these different offices are working together with an eye on JEDI. So I want to briefly just review some of the demands that came out of Decolonized Commons, especially for those newer students who aren't familiar with some of the history. These are some of the demands that which was led by students that came out of Decolonized Commons, including improving both hiring and retention of faculty and staff, which is something we continue to struggle with and we continue to work on. Emphasize training around JEDI issues specifically for teachers and administrators, which we spent a lot of time on, especially this semester, but have engaged in a lot of training opportunities, have offered a lot of training opportunities in years past. Support student-led discussions on race. That has happened, I would say, consistently since 2015. A special review process for disciplining students of color. We have addressed this kind of in a more comprehensive way by wholly converting our student conduct policy to a restorative first approach. And our restorative first approach is squarely positioned inside of an anti-oppression lens. So that's one of the ways we've addressed that. Having a visible multicultural center. So now I'm blanking on the name because I haven't been to that place in so long. So the cultural center.
There you go.
Cultural Center, Social Justice and Cultural Center. It exists in a building form, which many of us have not visited in a long time, but it's right across from the Student Counseling Center. So there's actually a physical space for students from marginalized locations to have a safe, actual physical space to meet. And then finally, implement an ethnic studies curricula, which I know that there have been many curriculum efforts, and I'm not sure exactly where this one stands, but I know that there has been work around this specifically. So moving right along, so some of the outcomes of the decolonized commons were, these were some of the highlights, I'll say. Many more things other than this happened, but there was a lot of work into creating minimum and preferred qualifications for all job postings, which still exist today. In addition to that, there are specific questions both asked in every job application as well as job interviews related to JEDI, related to capacity and competency, depending on what tier that job posting is in. So based on the amount of role power someone has, supervisory capacity, faculty versus staff, there's a lot of different factors that go into determining what level of capacity someone needs to have in order to fulfill that position. Fostering an inclusive community was an introductory training that resulted, and this was one of many different trainings that were both created by the OIC and offered multiple times throughout. And we'll go over more about training in a little bit. The restorative and anti-oppression framework, again, embedded into all policies and procedures, that is core to not only the conduct policy, but also to how we address conflict and how we address grievances, both for students, faculty, and staff. Yeah, so just a lot of things came out of Decolonized Commons and was the impetus for and the foundation for where we are today, and the hard work that Regina Smith and Jamie Duggan and many others put their soul and their sweat and their tears and their blood into creating the foundation that we're building on right now. And I don't think we could get to where we are right now without that foundation. So just want to acknowledge that. These are some of the challenges and obstacles that we faced even after the OIC did so much work. There still continue to be some of these challenges. And these are the challenges and obstacles that we really focused on for this year and what we were trying to address. And number one on that list is accountability and structures for accountability. So even if we have really awesome strategies and really great goals and really great trainings, what happens when harm occurs? What happens when people step out of the bounds? Or what happens when people ignore the oppressive behaviors? So the accountability structures is something that we're really prioritizing across the board. The other thing that we realized in over time is that structural change, systemic change, cultural change cannot happen by a few committed individuals. And it cannot happen on the backs of people of color or people from historically marginalized locations. And I think that a lot of that we've learned the hard way, and we're trying to unlearn some of that. Especially as white people, I think that our privilege has led us to kind of take a back seat or to be led instead of to lead alongside or to lead with people of color in this work. So what we recognize is that there is this tendency for people with privilege to either disengage altogether or to marginally engage. And what we are trying to do is get people across the community. It's really going to take all of us to change the culture, not just some of us. The other thing that has been a challenge over time is kind of a dualistic mind frame. And that can mean a lot of different things. But in this context, we're talking really about some of the protests to prioritizing equity work or JEDI work is, well, we have all these other competing priorities for resources, for in a variety of different ways. And our unified response to that is it doesn't have to be either or. We can do these things alongside all the other things. And in fact, we have to, because all the other things that are important, if we don't integrate this equity framework within all that we do, we're just going to create unsustainable or initiatives that actually create more harm in our community. So the other challenge has been in the past lack of financial or staff resources. That has been addressed in some ways this semester, which I'm happy to report that Naropa has actually dedicated quite a number of resources specifically to this. Regina is now Vice President of Mission, Culture, and Inclusive Community and gets to spend all of her time specifically on this and not have to juggle a million other things. She also has the support of me and of Sean and the rest of the MCIC staff to have it as our jobs to maintain focus on this. We also have one of our board of trustees last year dedicated a significant amount of funds to donate towards increasing the capacity. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. There are also two different funds in the development office. One is a scholarship fund for students of color, and the other is a programming fund for JEDI. So those are two specific funds in the development office that are being raised intentionally right now. So a lot of energy and resources going into this at the moment. So moving along, I want to talk now about the action plan and kind of go more in depth. Some of you have seen kind of an overview of the action plan, but this is a more in-depth version of that. And I'm happy to take questions if any of those should arise. And I'm going to encourage you to just unmute yourself and interrupt me if there feels like a pressing question. And if not, just put them in the chat and I'll get to them at the end. So the JEDI core group came up with a action plan that includes two major areas. And the reason why we have two major areas is at first we were getting caught in that dualistic frame of, well, we need to recruit more faculty, staff, and students of color, recruit and maintain, but we also need to have an environment where those people can exist without harm. So which do we do first? And we decided it actually can't be either or. Again, we have to do both and we have to do both at the same time, which requires more capacity, which requires more resources. But we feel like we have the resources now to actually hold all of this at the same time, which is really good. So the two areas, one on the left here is institutional capacity development. And this really has to do with the culture, right? And the capacity within that culture. So this includes things like campus climate. And sorry, I'm getting to my notes here. So the goal around campus climate is to create a resilient, power and conflict positive community that centers the experience of belonging for underrepresented community members. So that is our goal with regards to campus climate. And I'll talk more specifically about action items related to campus climate in a moment. The second goal for ICD, or institutional capacity development, is really developing the capacity of each individual to not only advance their consciousness in this work, but also to continue to engage and increase engagement with this work. So we're all in different, no matter our social locations, we're all in different developmental places with power and equity consciousness. And we all are starting at different places, and we need to gauge our own developmental stage and our own level of engagement. But we also have to do that at a collective level. So there are several efforts. This is a goal in particular that we really focused on this semester, and I'll go over more of that in a moment. So the goal for this one is really creating capacity within the community to be able to grow individually and collectively in equity and power consciousness. And then the third goal for institutional capacity development is support and accountability. And we provide those two words together because it's actually a restorative frame that we need to provide systems of accountability for our community. But first we have to create structures of support and have clear expectations, right? So we say, here's what we're expecting you, how you can engage in a just and equitable way in our community. Here's what we're expecting. Here's some support for doing that. And if you choose not to, then here's how we're going to hold ourselves and each other accountable. So the goal here is providing a balance of support and accountability for community members and the institution to ensure fidelity in our commitment to JEDI work. So this is institutional capacity development. This is where we focus most of our time up until this point, and we will continue to focus here as we move into more of institutional strategy implementation, or ISI. So the three goals related to institutional strategy implementation. The first is access and equity. This really has to do with how we're structuring our community and the policies and practices that we have in place that make our community and what we offer accessible and equitable. So the goal here is to increase the presence, success, and satisfaction of underrepresented students, staff, and faculty. Just want to emphasize that word, satisfaction. So the second goal in regards with strategy implementation is curricular and co-curricular transformation. And this is such an important piece, not just for our students, but also for our faculty. Having curriculum that actually is, that actually centers social transformation is really the key here. The goal, and we have many task force. We're going to go over all the things that Cauldron and many other academic affairs and everyone is hard at work to ensure that there's not just some tweaks here and there, but there's really a transformation in the development and presentation of curriculum. So the goal here is reimagining the curricular and co-curricular content and pedagogy in ways that center social transformation. And then finally, number 3 is resource dedication. We've touched on this a little bit already, but really encouraging the commitment of our institution and the sources of funds to be allocated in ways that are equitable and that support a social justice consciousness. So the goal here is committing to the allocation and reallocation of university resources to support sustainable transformation in the area of JEDI work. And I want to say that, you know, Naropa is hard at work trying to manage in a resource constricted environment, which to me makes it even more impressive, the amount of dedication that they are committing towards JEDI work, given that we are in a resource constricted time right now. So just want to name that as well. So here are some of the advancements that we've made this past semester in the fall. So I just want to review. A lot of these have to do with institutional capacity development. So that first half of the action plan. The first is we created our very first JEDI course that is on Canvas, and it is mandatory for all Naropa as well as our board of trustees. So that means cabinet, our administration, all supervisors, all staff, and all core faculty are required to take this JEDI 100 course. And I'll go over more in depth what that course covers. But this has been a huge undertaking, not only to create the course, but to administer it out to the entire employees has been quite an effort. And shout out to Betsy Blom for creating that, helping to really put that course together, and to Sean Goodman for helping to manage the back end of that course. Another thing related to kind of capacity development in our community is we've done the research and met with several outside consultants. The Board of Trustees has had committed some money to hiring some folks to bring in some field experts in the area of JEDI. And it looks like we're closest to hiring Courageous Conversations. We're in conversation with the Pacific Education Group, and who created Courageous Conversations. And we're looking at providing an intensive day-long training for employees, as well as consulting and coaching for cabinet, so the Naropa's administration, as well as the JEDI core group. And that's, it's always helpful in this work to have outside perspectives, right? And to have outside accountability, to give us information. It can become very insular, and we can feel that we're making progress in a certain way, but having that outside perspective is going to be really important. So we're in the process of that, and that will continue on into this semester as well as into the rest of the year. Other things that we've engaged in this last semester is the Social Multicultural Foundations Task Force was created to examine the Social Multicultural Foundations course, which is in, oh, that got deleted, GSCP, the Graduate School of Psychology. So that task force is not only looking at the curriculum for that course, but also who teach it and the requirements for who teaches that course. So that's one of the focuses, and that also will continue on. Cauldron accountability. So our faculty senate, this is really exciting, has committed to basically establishing accountability measures for their committee's work. So there are several faculty committees that work to create the Naropa educational experience. And So Cauldron has asked each of those committees to come up with their own charge related to JEDI work, to look at what is our committee's purpose and how does it actually further JEDI work? How are we actually engaging with JEDI? So those are to be reported back to Cauldron. So there's multiple levels of accountability happening, and that is one of them. Another program we launched last semester is the JEDI Ambassador Program, which currently exists for faculty and staff. These folks, there's about 35, I believe, volunteers who just are volunteering their time to help other faculties and staff get engaged with the work of JEDI. And specifically how they're doing that is reaching out to folks who maybe have not started the JEDI 100 course or who are having trouble getting through it for whatever reason. The idea behind this is really to have peer-to-peer support. And again, to go back to, this is all of our work and not just a few of us. If we're all holding each other in responsibility, we're going to get much, much further. So these JEDI ambassadors have kindly extended their time and energy to ensure that these initiatives are successful across the board. Just to mention, okay, and then the last thing I want to mention is we're also working very, very closely with human resources. And we are offering, MCIC is offering integrated support in both the hiring and onboarding of new employees. So that includes not only ensuring the fidelity of the hiring policies and practices we put in place, but also ensuring that the onboarding of new employees includes adequate information and support, so that we can offer substantial support, but also create and maintain the kind of culture that we want at Naropa. So just to briefly touch on the JEDI course that's on Canvas, and this will hopefully be released to students sometime later this year. So these are the different areas that the JEDI 100 course covers. And each of these areas are necessary for capacity development and create the opportunity to advance along the developmental stages. So as I said, everyone's in different places, but hopefully it provides an opportunity for people to reflect for the first time or continue to reflect in this work. Currently, over 75% of our employees have either finished the course or are in progress to completing the course. So we are working to ensure that that number reaches as 100% as possible. And then JEDI ambassadors, just really quickly, again, are really committed to not only encouraging engagement with JEDI work for other folks in their spheres and their departments and their Naropa world, part of the world, but also to give us feedback to the JEDI core group on what's being heard and how people are engaging with the work and so on. So that group is really, really important to us. So in spring this semester, these are some of the things that we're focusing on. And these are not in a particular order, but these are the things that we are engaged with this semester. And this isn't an exhaustive list. There are many other things that we're always doing. But these are some of the things that I haven't talked about yet. So one of the first things is the JEDI ambassadors are offering support sessions in each of the 6 areas that were listed before: self-compassion, applying JEDI to your job, power differentials, etc. So there's a support session on each one of those topics offered twice the semester for all faculty and staff to deepen the work that they are doing in the online self-paced course. So the support session calendar should go out sometime today. And I think the first support session is this Friday on the 22nd. So I encourage you, if you're a faculty and staff member, to engage with at least one of those support sessions. Just go ahead, look at the email, choose one that fits with your schedule and your interest, and go ahead and put it in your calendar. Even if you feel like you know everything there is to know on that subject, go anyway, because we need your wisdom and your perspective. And from my perspective, there's always more to learn. And then another thing that we're doing is farming up the consultants that we're bringing in. So we are planning to bring in someone as soon as possible. So that's something that we're focused on doing really soon. Another thing that we're working on is a climate assessment, and I'm working with Daniel Kantrick, who's our, going to say data guy, but that just doesn't feel
institutional researcher.
Institutional researcher. Thank you. And we're collaborating all the existing data points that are currently being collected, and also researching various climate survey models that focus specifically on JEDI. It's really important to us that we have some sort of pre-post measurements, and so we're going to get that from a variety of sources, but we're going to do that in a strategic way. So that's another focus for this semester, as a lot of those surveys are coming up in April. Another thing that we are developing this semester is more online courses to put on Canvas that can be taken in a self-paced way. So we're going to have another JEDI course that will be available for faculty specifically. That's really going to focus on classroom management and addressing inequity in the classroom. So that's in the works. And then we're also developing a right use of power course for Canvas, as well as various CREST courses, which will enable people who are curious about restorative practices and right use of power to be able to take those in a self-paced way and have access to that. Those are also going to be integrated into the onboarding for new employees. And then finally, for this semester, we're really going to turn our focus more on strategy implementation planning. So how do we support each of our departments for them to come up with their own strategies related to the goals that we listed earlier from the action plan. So we're really going to be spending a lot of time creating that system. And then for the rest of the year, these are some additional things that we're looking at. Again, strategic implementation is going to be a priority. So an ongoing way for us to support departments, not only in creating those strategies, but also maintaining them and following through with them. That is going to require a lot of support and accountability. We are also forming a kind of a support and accountability group that will have representatives from across the university to focus on what is our system of accountability, how will that be enacted. So that is one of our priorities. And then, of course, student integration. I'm sure if you're a student on this call, you might be curious, well, how can we engage with this? And we do have a plan for integrating students into courses, into the JEDI Ambassador program, things like that. So just to know that that is in the works, and we will let you know as soon as that becomes available to you. And then finally, resource dedication. It's one of the realities that we have to continue to have financial resources, staff resources, and then energy for those staff to continue to do this work. And so that looks like a variety of different things. Regina's going to be engaging in more fundraising and outreach to bolster the sustainable resources that we will have to keep this work going. And then finally, we always say at the end that we consider learning as an iterative process. We're going to, you know, take things as they come up and adjust our course according to the needs of our community. With our action plan in mind, but we're going to continuously learn from you all and from each other and what's needed. So really engaging in feedback is a critical piece of this. And I know I mentioned it at the beginning, but just to say that I highly, highly value feedback, and each of your perspectives and experiences is important to me, as important to the JEDI core group. Even if I've heard very similar things over and over and over again, I want to hear your specific experience. So however you want to communicate that to me, I welcome it. I have a email address that you can email me. If you have any ideas or feedback with regard to JEDI work. And with that, I wanted to leave plenty of time for any questions or discussion around JEDI efforts, because I don't know about you, but I'm tired of hearing my voice. So I'm going to open it up to the group.
Thank you, Amanda. That was amazing. I just want to express my appreciation. That's a lot of information to get across in a succinct, clear, and visually stunning way. And I so appreciate your willingness to do that for this community.
I'm wondering, where will the recording of this meeting be? Because I know there's a few folks in my cohort who'd love to see it who couldn't be here.
That's a great question. And I think what we'll do is probably just maybe email it out to the community, just so that it's really out there and available.
I can bring up also, in addition, we did get some feedback that some of our community members who are people of color feel like the JEDI 100 course isn't really tailored to their experience. And so we do have a subgroup of folks who's going to work on creating kind of a chapter of the JEDI 100 course that's more geared toward folks of color in our community, so that the experience is just as rich and hopefully supportive for them as it is for other members of the community. So just want to say that that's a project a concern we're aware of and that we're addressing.
Thanks, Regina. Any other questions or comments? This is also an opportunity for you to, voice your concerns or your suggestions. We're really open to that.
Hi there, Amanda. I have a quick question. Hi. I was wondering if the JKS school was involved in the JEDI program as well.
Not specifically. We've opened up basically all the programs that we have to any faculty and staff. We plan to engage students more directly soon, but yeah, not in a direct way. Do you have an idea for how that could happen?
Well, I was wondering if the faculty from the JKS school also was involved.
As much as all the other faculty is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you want to jump in, Susan.
No, I just wanted to say yes, they're involved just like the rest of the faculty. Yeah, there's not a, yeah. So the quick answer is yes.
And we haven't gotten down to the departmental level. So the JEDI 100 course is for all core faculty. And then as Amanda pointed out in the presentation, there is a plan then for the core team to kind of have a road show and to visit with individual, programs, academic programs, but also the administrative side of the university, to find out how we can support individual programs in having their own goals that are discipline or department specific, but that hopefully will happen sometime this semester and at the latest in the fall. But first, one step at a time, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, Maura, just to encourage you to reach out to Jalynn Chapman. She's back from sabbatical and she's chair currently of JKS. And so I'm sure she'll be interested in your ideas about that.
Okay, thank you. I have her for a class, so that works out great.
And I know that Swanee is a JEDI ambassador and has been involved at various levels too, so. Any other questions or comments?
I see some feedback in the chat. Did you already see it, Amanda?
I just saw it. So a request about deadlines for Canvas course that faculty and that JEDI co-coordinate with administrative departments who are also creating Canvas courses. Last semester, I had deadlines to complete several Canvas courses all in the same week. I want to engage with these, but also if we can have conversation about times. So, yeah. So, Amelia, thank you so much for bringing that up. Collaboration continues to be one of our priorities and also one of the most difficult things to do. There's so many moving parts, and we're really striving to coordinate our efforts. We tried to provide several different deadlines that were possible for folks, both before and after the winter break to accommodate that, but totally understand your concern there.
Any other questions, reactions, celebrations, quotations, songs?
Great. No song just yet, Regina, but I do have a question. So thinking about the student body and the things that students are seeing and students are wanting change for, of course, they can refer to what JEDI is already doing, but wondering where there might be a space that students can go to, whether that be an email or something, where they can offer feedback of what they're still seeing, what's still being an issue on the ground, essentially.
Yeah, so currently I am the person to go to for that. If you have feedback or you have a concern or you're experiencing an interpersonal difficulty, anyone at any time can sign up on my Calendly link, which I can post in the chat here. And that will get you on my schedule for a 30-minute appointment. I'm always welcome to meet in person. Or if you would like to, I can also meet with you. I can meet with you in person, or I can also, so I'm trying to talk, receive any information via email. So you can just email me. Chances are I'm likely aware of things that are happening, but maybe not. So I would rather you err on the side of giving me too much information than not enough. So there's my Calendly link. Feel free to sign up if And Rihanna, you're welcome to share that with the student body too.
Yeah, and I would hope that students are also being encouraged to talk to Sun. And I know that you're aware of that, but we do want students to view Sun as a place, as an empowered group that can advocate for them, that can, yeah, that has more of a voice than like an individual student. And I know Sun is connected to Amanda already, so so that's. And then, you know, part of it is just to say that there is a gap between problem and solution, that unfortunately most of our students are not going to always feel the immediate addressing of their concerns. As you can see, we're still addressing concerns in a very institutional way, but that the Decolonized Commons students brought up in 2015. And because students are a transitory, is it transitory population, they don't always see the fruits of their efforts except for when they come back and if they stay engaged as alumnics. I do know that when we had our like town hall, when we kind of addressed and came together as a community around the murder of George Floyd, that we did have one of our student leaders from Decolonized Commons on the call. And they were kind of amazed at how much the culture had shifted since they, you know, were a part of that student movement. But of course, students that come in now are like, what are you doing to address these issues? Like, because they don't get to see where the culture was 5 years ago. So we try to address concerns as quickly as possible, but sustainable change is something that has to happen on the institution and policy and procedure level, as well as the practice, like day-to-day level. So just to say that really want to hear from students and direct them to Sun and then to Amanda. And then I try to make as much space as I can to address student concerns when students need to meet with me, especially marginalized students who feel like they need to speak with someone else who might have a similar experience. So I do try to prioritize that in terms of my calendar.
And I will say for Sun that now that we're on campus, we have a discussion board forum that's a suggestion box. So if you are a student, please use that space so that we can get the feedback and potential solutions to people who have more power than us.
Yeah, and I'd like to just piggyback on the offer that Regina and Amanda were making and say that if any issues related to faculty or courses, please feel free to reach out to me. That's my job is, you know, I'm the chief academic officer. So I want to, which is, okay, that's not a really interesting title, but anyway. So if there are any concerns around that, and my first initial and last name is my email address. And so, and I'm happy to meet with Sun. I've done that in the past and would be happy to do that again. Thanks, Heike.
I have a question that is probably a really big bag of worms, so feel free to be like, not right now, thanks. But I'm just sort of constantly thinking about what is the number one reason I hear from people, I work more with staff more, as to why they don't engage with things like JEDI training or any trainings that Naropa offers. And of course, the number one thing that I hear over and over is, I just don't have the time. And so while I hear that JEDI itself is getting a department and getting the financial support, is there any greater conversations or looking at the on-the-ground support that everybody else needs to even have 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours to engage with this work?
I think that's so important. Yeah.
I mean, I can say that I have addressed it more with cabinet than I ever have before, about the need for cabinet members to communicate to their teams that they need to block this time off on their schedule during work hours to complete the course. And so, and cabinet is taking, like I said, not only the JEDI course, but other a course through the University of Michigan called Leading for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And we're just about to get to a module that's on strategic planning for the university. And so my hope is that as our consciousness as a collective of leaders shifts, that will then create more support and accountability for directors and therefore their staff to actually be doing this during the work hours. But I would love suggestions on other ways that folks feel like we could be, like you said, prioritizing this in our daily work lives. There's also the creation of new, we will be influential in the creation of the next model of performance appraisals. And I believe that this skill set is a critical competency for anyone who works in higher education in this day and age. And so it will need to be reflected in how folks are evaluated if they have actually completed the courses, the trainings, and are demonstrating competency in their, in how they show up at work. So those are some ideas and a request for support and suggestions.
Yeah, I want to just say that I think it needs to be part of the culture of our workplace. And so, just as a staff member, just, letting our mates know that we were at this meeting today and how it was and sort of what we heard and sort of creating a buzz and a sense of, I'm going to this, how about you kind of thing, that maybe an old woman's way of expressing something, but just creating a buzz and spreading the word. And I realize we don't see each other that much, so that's hard to do. But I think there's just on the informal cultural level, getting it in the conversation. And I'm sorry I have to go, but thanks for the conversation. Thanks, Amanda and Regina.
Thank you, Suzanne. Yeah, and actually I was going to say that adjunct faculty is another issue, where they're not really paid to do extra things like this. And I think someone told me that it's like over 40%, a little bit over 40% of our faculty at Naropa are adjunct or 40%, I can't remember I won't quote stats, I can't remember, but it's a lot of our classes are taught by adjunct faculty. So figuring out a way to address compensation and for adjunct faculty is another thing on the list.
I also think, like, just personally, the culture of busyness at Naropa specifically, and of overwhelm and overwork, and that's kind of a related issue in terms of how we're a contemplative university in some aspects, but not a contemplative university in other kind of work culture aspect. And being in a resource constricted environment, I know that makes folks feel like they just have to do more and more with less and less. But I think that's something that we need to find a way to address as a university, so that we can really walk our talk and that our staff and faculty feel nourished and like there is access to abundance. Feels like a missing link in terms of cultural transformation. So I don't know how yet, but I love the conversation and would love to continue that conversation with others. I know we'll be having it in MCIC. So.
Not that. Anything else?
I have a question. Speaking for the student body, I know that there's an offering Monday mornings at 10 to become involved with the JEDI work that's going on. I'm curious if there's anything as a Sun representative that I could direct students towards to become active members of the conversation of what's going on with JEDI?
It's a great question, Zanon. Thank you. So Mondays at 10 a.m. is a resource for whites students and community members. So it's anti-racist whites and allies. And that's an hour-long meeting, helpful for examining our personal development in power and equity consciousness, which is a really critical part of JEDI work. A lot of times white people want to jump into action without kind of examining their own kind of consciousness. So I highly recommend, yeah, and Karina is also recommending ARWA for any white person at Naropa. Please make that a priority. In terms of being a part of strategy and action, there's also an ARWA action group that's specifically devoted to doing more social justice oriented things. Again, it's anti-racist whites and allies. There's also for students and community members of color, there is COCA that's meeting.
Well, we're actually looking for a student diversity officer and for people to hold that group. We are having a meeting this Friday at 2 o'clock to, just trying to, because our student diversity officer, Antonio, just graduated in the fall, and he was holding SOCA COCA down. So now we're looking for a student diversity officer or students interested in holding community of color groups. So please feel free to step forward or pass along the news to folks, looking for a work study position.
And then the JEDI Ambassador Program will eventually have a student invitation. Not sure when that's going to happen. We're also considering, I'm one of the advisors for SUN. I think I'm the primary advisor, and then we have an advisory group for SUN, and we're talking about maybe having a liaison between SUN and the JEDI core group. So we're considering that as well.
We've been talking about that in SUN, and it's something that we're really looking forward to, the potential for that. I think it'd be really helpful to orient SUN more towards a social justice and restorative community sort of action plan.
Yeah, that's really, when I heard about that, I got really excited because obviously it's my bag, but I'm excited to help SUN in whatever way that I can move along that path and see what ways we can collaborate.
Okay, thank you. And
CREST, of course, is another huge area in terms of increasing your capacity for JEDI work. I'm biased, of course, but I think understanding how to increasing your capacity to give and receive feedback, increasing your capacity to understand power dynamics in an interpersonal relationship, increasing your capacity for having difficult conversations. All of that is deeply part of this work. So CREST is another free resource with a lot of free training and practice groups, and we have the Restorative Community Council where people can really have a voice. So that's another area if you're interested, kind of if students are interested in getting involved, that's another great place. So we have just a few more minutes left. Okay. Thank you all for being here on this very important day, January 20th, where we now have a new president. I just feel like I have to name it again. I'm feeling the both sides of the energetic coin. I'm feeling anxious, and also I'm feeling some excitement today, and just appreciating your willingness to carve this time out of your day to learn about what's going on, and to be engaged in your community. That's really the key here, right? To moving forward is, can we just communicate with one another and yeah, collaborate. So thank you all.
Thank you, Amanda and Regina.
And I will be sending follow-up emails, so be on the lookout. Goodbye.